off by saying your name and what you do at this church?
Okay, my name is Lewis Johnson, and I'm the pastor of North Park Baptist Church. And I have been the pastor here since spring of 1991, so I've been here for 23 plus years.
Now, can you tell us where the church is located?
Okay, the church is located in far North Abilene, approximately halfway between the Hardin-Simmons University campus and Interstate 20. The way I usually tell people how to get here is to go to the Hardin-Simmons football field and then go straight north on Simmons Avenue until you arrive at the church.
Now, this area in Abilene, as we talked about before, has been heavily damaged with the hailstorm. Were some people in your congregation affected by this?
There are some. Some of our church members drive in to our facilities on Sunday, but we have still a number of folks who live within, say, a mile of the church building. Really everyone who lives in this corner of Abilene got hit, and so several of our church members did.
Can you tell us some of the stories that some of the families have talked to you about, some of the damages from their home?
One couple in our church, a senior adult couple, their house was just pulverized by it. They live about 2 or 3 blocks away from here, and they happened not to be home when it happened. But when they came home, they had shattered glass, and the shingles on the roof were just utterly destroyed. Directly across the street from the church, there is a couple, and they are not members of our church, but when I saw them going around and kind of assessing the damage, I took the opportunity to go over and see if there was anything I could do to help them to make sure that they were all right. And they were fine. They were at home when the storm hit, but several of the hailstones not only went through the shingles but went through the decking, and they had 3 or 4 very large softball-sized hailstones that landed basically at their feet while they were in the living room of their home.
I lost my question.
How
is this? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say and after the storm had passed, my wife and I were driving around and kind of surveying the damage and just looking at the hail still all over the place. Drove by the Hardin-Simmons baseball and football and soccer fields, and it was just like softballs scattered all around. And we stopped at one street corner between here and the Hardin-Simmons campus, and what caused us to stop was we saw some friends of ours, young family who live in Hardin-Simmons married student housing, and they were stopping cars as they went by just to check and make sure that they were all right. And one of their neighbors across the street and catty-corner from their house, an elderly gentleman lives there and is confined to a wheelchair, and just pulverized the entire north side of his home, and old plastic or vinyl siding, and you could still the hailstones, you could still see them buried in that siding and in the wood siding behind that. And this family had gone in and was helping to sweep up the broken glass and to pick up the hailstones that were inside the home, and to try to get him in a situation where he could be safe.
And are most of these homes still damaged?
A lot of them are. I've noticed in driving around through the neighborhood that there's a lot of work being done, not just on roofs, but also on windows, on siding, and a lot of the homes that the siding was damaged, they're just getting completely redone. But if you take a quick drive through the neighborhood between here and Hardin Simmons, and you'll still see a lot of homes, well, like our church. We've got a contract with a roofer, but he hasn't fixed it yet. And really, that's sort of what you see here, a lot of damage that still hasn't been totally cleaned up.
Mm-hmm. And for some of these families, maybe in your congregation or maybe just in the community in general, who maybe can't afford a contractor, how are they getting help?
That's a good question. The quick answer to which is I do not know. And there probably are as many different situations with the homeowners or the home renters as there are individuals. Because some of the folks who live in the community, they're older, they're retired, perhaps their home is paid for and they might not have insurance any longer. They didn't see a need for it perhaps, or could not afford it, and so they let the coverage lapse. And now they are having to try to figure out what do we do next? Where do we go for help? Because there's work obviously that needs to be done on our home, but we can't afford to do it. Now, there are a lot of rental properties in this part of Abilene as well, and how quickly those repairs are being done really depends on how quickly the landlord is negotiating with their insurance company, or if perhaps they were just very modest, very inexpensive homes that the landlord in some cases might not have had insurance, and so the renters are just kind of in a holding pattern until something happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Not really. I just want to say that I was in kind of driving around through the neighborhood. I was really pleased to see how the neighbors were out checking on one another, and where folks knew where the senior adults were, the disabled folks were, and made it a special point to find their way over to their home and to say, what can we do to help you? And a lot of the time, the north side of Abilene, perhaps far north Abilene especially, gets a bad reputation for being, for lack of a better way of expressing it, lower class neighborhood. But the class of a neighborhood is dependent on not on the value of the property only, but also the character of the people who live there. And I think this was just a reminder to us that there are good people, very helpful, very, very concerned, loving and generous people who live here. And I've been here in this church for 23 years, and this is the first time that I've ever seen anything of this magnitude happen. But it was exciting to me to see how the neighborhood was kind of pulling together and checking on one another afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think it was a time for people to get outside of their homes and actually go and check on their neighbors and meet new people, make new friends. I know that happened to me where I was, and so it was a good time. Good pulling together the community. Yeah,
and interestingly, I was having a conversation about something similar to this with a fellow. He and his wife just recently moved to Abilene for him to complete his bachelor's degree at Hardin Simmons. And he pointed out how a lot of the time in more affluent neighborhoods, folks come home from work or the store or wherever, and they open up their garage door by remote control. They drive in, they close the garage door, they get out, go inside the house without ever setting foot in the front yard. And it's a lot easier when you have those kind of amenities that you're able financially to surround yourself with, to kind of cloister inward and to insulate and to isolate yourself from your next door neighbor. And here in our neighborhood, that is not the case. Most people don't have automatic garage door openers. A lot of people don't have garages at all. And if they cannot afford to run their air conditioning all the time, then they go outside. And I found that a lot of times people in less affluent neighborhoods, they're better at making connections with their neighbors.
I agree.
Mhm.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much,
Sure
Liz.
thing.
That was great.